Welcome to the Halifax Real Estate Podcast. I'm Jason Paul, a realtor in Halifax, Nova Scotia at eXp Realty, and I'm here to help you gain a better understanding of real estate in Halifax. Kevin Riles is the owner of KWR Approvals, Inc., a company that specializes in land development, recently completing the Macintosh development in Herring Cove. Kevin and I are breaking down the step-by-step process of developing land for the sake of building a house on it. Please welcome Kevin Riles. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jason. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for coming back.
Listen, great to be back. Enjoyed the last time, and I'm looking forward to this.
So today we're talking about land developing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just for the people at home, how did you get into land developing?
Well, interestingly enough, my favorite subject in school was geography. And I knew I wasn't going to be a geography teacher, so I started to think, what could I do? And I went to Dalhousie, and my background was economics and history. So I knew I wasn't going to be a history economics. And then I found urban planning. So then I went up to Nova Scotia Community College and got an urban planning diploma. And from there, I became a municipal planning director. So I was responsible for the subdivisions, the approvals as a municipality. Now, I always knew I was going to go in the private sector, but I had to understand the dynamics and the makings and the mechanics of how planning worked on the municipal level.
Okay.
And then from there, I got a job as a vice president of a land development firm. And so I understood how the developers and the pro formas worked. And then about 23 years ago, I started KWR Approvals, which is a land development consulting firm. So I've been fortunate. I've worked in many places, but I started at the municipal level, the corporate level, and then ran my own firm. So I see it from both lenses, as a developer and as government and municipal. Yeah,
so you had a well-experienced background in terms of everyone involved in developing and producing suburbs, new developments, land in general.
Yeah, and as you appreciate, I mean, the municipality is looking to create developments, whether they're condos or subdivisions that, meet a public's needs for housing or looks well. So you have to understand at the end of the day, staff are doing reports, the public is involved, council makes the final decision. So there's the whole approval side, but at the end of the day, who writes the check to build these things is the developer.
Yeah.
And so you have to create things that are financially sustainable, make economic sense, and that's always kind of the dance and the science. So I've been fortunate and blessed to kind of see both sides. So with KWR, when we're working on projects, we see the lens through council and the public and staff, but we also see how the developer is trying to obviously make a reasonable profit and create a good name for his developments because they're his brand at the end of the day.
Yeah. I always try to explain when people talk about the cost of new houses, I always try to explain the sense of if you're a developer and it's your job to front the capital.
Absolutely.
That is you putting up for the purchase of the land, the development of the land, which we'll get into the step-by-steps of how you develop land.
Yeah.
But you put up all that capital in front, and when you're in the private sector, you've built a business and you've built an income and wealth for yourself and your family through fundamental principles.
Absolutely.
You're not going to forego those principles if it doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, no new developments are built, which is why they rent or sell at the price points that they are, because they make sense financially.
100%.
Right.
100%.
So we've seen, as we've talked about this before on the podcast, we talked about the housing crisis going on in Halifax. A question that comes up to me now fairly often is someone will say, I'm not going to get in the market. I'm not going to buy a house. I'm going to buy my own land and I'm going to develop it and build a house on it. So I thought you were the perfect guest to come back to talk about how you actually go through purchasing land, developing it, and then getting a house on it, what that looks like in realistically logistic terms for bringing on all the humans involved, and financially for how much it's actually going to cost from start to finish.
Sure.
So step one, where would you go if you're looking for land?
So, I mean, there's many means. I mean, you can do the traditional, as you know, with your real estate background. I mean, you can look at the various real estate channels. You can look at keeping your eyes open. You can ask agents. You can do your own research. You can go find a piece of land you like and knock on somebody's door. At the end of the day, there's always land available. But think about this from a business model. People don't always appreciate whether you do it individually or developer. There's very few businesses that if you go buy a piece of land, and let's say you're a developer and you buy 100 acres and you want to get it rezoned or do whatever you need to basically build a subdivision. You buy that land, you spend money for it. By the time the approval process is done, you could be looking at 2 years. Then you actually have to get it what they call pad ready. So pad ready simply means that the services are in. It could be septic or well. It could be sewer and water. You have to have a driveway, a street, a curb, a culvert. And then that allows you to have a pad that puts a foundation in. So when you go to certain subdivisions, we all drive around and you see all the streets done, all the sidewalks, the lights, the trees, but there's no homes. That developer has a pad ready. So that's the definition between a developer and a builder. A developer historically buys the land, gets the land approved, gets it pad ready, and then what he does for a builder, because many developers or builders don't want to get involved in approvals or politics, they want to go build, they go and they basically say to that developer, I'm going to buy your pad ready lot because I can go get a permit tomorrow to do what I do well, which is build a house.
Yeah.
And so they pay a premium for that, but that's what they do. So the developer takes care of all of it. I use the analogy like Starbucks. You go in, buy a cup of coffee or a cappuccino, you're paying a premium, but you're going into a place that's got the coffee, grind the coffee, you sit down, all the work is done, you want to buy the coffee. And you'll pay a good price because the coffee's ready for you. That's a developer. The builder gets that lot. So at the end of the day, if you're doing it yourself, the key is to make sure you have either a good project manager or a professional. Because think about this. First of all, you have to buy the land. You should know about real estate, so you're buying at a good price. So if you don't know real estate, hire a good, experienced real estate person.
Yep.
Once you buy it, you say, okay, I have a vision. Maybe I want to put a 3,000 square foot home. Well, then you need a designer, architect. But once you put that home on, you got to grade the lot. You have to make sure, for example, is there any wetlands or water courses on the property? So what we often do is always think of land like painting a canvas. We always make sure the canvas is clean. So any piece of land we look at, we almost do one of three things. We always make sure that you can get access to driveways. We've had a lot of clients call us in a real bind. They buy a piece of land, but it's on a curve, or it's on a hill. And then the province or the city or the municipality won't give them access from a driveway. So they've got a piece of land that they can't access. Or what happens, they buy a piece of land and then we do a wetland or water course delineation. So in most of Nova Scotia, there's a 66 to 100 foot buffer around a water course or wetland you can't build in. So all of a sudden they buy this great piece of land, they get the water course and wetland done, and they realize it's littered with wetlands and water courses, and it makes it difficult to build or not where you want to build. And then the last thing is what we call the civil engineering. How do you get the sewer and the water to the property, or how do you put a septic system in? So those are the three foundations of any piece of property: the access of the driveway, the wetlands and the water courses, and how it's serviced with sewer and water or septic or well. Once you have that, then on that canvas you say, okay, now this is where we can put our house. And then once you want to put your house is, of course, you want to have somebody that's experienced that can build that. And what happens, we see this all the time. I mean, once upon a time, I dinkered with plumbing. It was a nightmare because, like most people, you see the bad TV commercials.
Yeah.
That was me. I'm going to pay a plumber to come in. It's the same thing. Unless you're really good at renovating or whatever, bring somebody to build your house. So if you're doing this on a massive scale with a developer and you've got 100 acres and you're building 100 homes, you have to know what you're doing. But for a regular individual, if you find that piece of land, you want to go that route, it's great. But just make sure you have the right professionals by your side with the best interest in mind. So at the end of the day, your vision is, whether it's Gaspereau Bay or whether it's Spryfield, you have a 1 acre or 10 acre lot and you have your house which you envision. But to get from that house where you put the key in the door, from the moment you buy the land, there's 6, 7, 8 key steps, and you don't want to misstep in any of those because that can be painful.
Okay, you've dropped a lot there, and I'm going to try and get through it. Sure. So I'm going to focus on the consumer right now, but I'm going to come back to subdivision planning because I'm really interested in how they do that. So the consumer, step one is finding the lot.
Yes.
Now, there are different kinds of lots, right? So what are the different kind of lots available?
So traditionally there's two. There's what we call service.
Yes.
That has sewer and water.
Okay.
There's septic and well. And then in some cases you have a hybrid where you might have water but no septic.
Yeah.
So those are the three, and that's the first step. The biggest consideration in that is if you have full services, particularly sewer and water, that's where you see smaller lots.
Yeah.
7 or 10,000. If you don't have septic, then you need a larger lot for your septic field. Often that's an acre or more.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. So what you want to make sure is if you're on sewer and water, that you buy that lot, that it can be serviced. So that's the most important thing. because whatever is going on there as a consumer, you have to have sewer, you have to have water dealt with.
Yep.
Otherwise, I mean, you're really in trouble. So that's number one. The second thing and most important is people forget about is the municipal zoning. Now, generally speaking, everyone thinks you can put a single family home everywhere. We've had clients call us up that bought property in the Annapolis Valley that only allows farms. Or it's in an environmentally sensitive area.
Yeah.
So they look at it and say, I just bought 10 acres. I'm going to put a house here. I mean, normally everybody can put a single family house. Now that's a bit of an unusual, but sometimes people think I'm going to do a bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to, rent it out and have an income property. So the two most important things is that will kill you is make sure the property can be serviced with a well, a septic, a sewer and water, and then make sure the zoning allows what you want. When those two are dealt with, then you can start to build a plan to get where you want to get.
Okay. Now, a few things about the lots.
Yeah.
I get this lovely theory all the time from friends and family who say, oh, I'm just going to buy a lot and throw a tiny home on it. And I'm always like, does a tiny home come with sewer and well?
Yeah.
Right? Because everyone thinks you can just buy a lot, throw a house on there, but there's a development process as well. So we talk about service lots in the sense of sewer, water, maybe hopefully a road. Then we have unserviced lots. So what are unserviced lots?
So unserviced lots, and again, it depends where you are.
Yeah.
So if it's unserviced, so in many municipalities, they're not ready to bring in services because, as you can imagine, the more pipe and sewer and everything you bring in, it costs the municipality and roads. So there's often places, even in HRM and other parts of what they call holding zones or unserviced, where basically, other than maybe one dwelling, you can't put anything on them. They're waiting for the growth of the city to reach it.
Okay.
So, there's a good point. We've had clients in the past that have bought large tracts of land or small, thinking, okay, I'm going to put something on it, to realize the city's basically put it in purgatory.
Oh.
Because what happens is they don't want to basically allow development in there because the cost of the taxpayer, or they may wait to the next plan.
Yeah.
You can't assume anything.
Yeah, and that's why those lots are typically always much cheaper.
Absolutely. And to your earlier point, I mean, here's been a shocker is that even in the municipality, there's parts of, for example, Bedford that are on septic. We all assume you drive through, you come in from Fairview through Rockingham, Bedford, and Sackville. There's large chunks of land there that are still on septic.
Really?
Yeah, and you would assume, that's in the heart of the city because they've never had the money or whatever the situation where they've connected those. Or what's interesting, you assume because you're in the city, there's always sewer and water. So there's places in HRM where the the sewage treatment plants are near capacity, where they've had moratoriums in recent years. Bedford's had one for years. Because, the sewage treatment plant is basically at 80-90% capacity until it's upgraded.
You can't change those septics to sewer lines.
No, and in some cases that would be built in. You'd have an as of right for a home, but maybe not much else. So we always say never assume anything when you buy a piece of land, whether it's yourself or with a professional. Make sure the zoning permits what you're trying to do. Make sure that it can be serviced, and then you get into the secondary issues like wetlands and water courses. But if you can't do what you want to do, and you can't service it, you're in trouble, and then you got to go through process to make that happen, and then you could be in a really bad place. So that's the two key for anybody, whether it's a person doing one lot or 100.
Can you take out a mortgage on a land purchase?
You can. That's a good question, but that's a great question actually, Jason. Typically, and you know this, financial institutions don't like to fund land because here's the reason. If you go to a bank and you build your own home, or a developer builds 100 and you run into trouble, at the end of the day, the bank says we have an asset. Yeah. We can take back your house and we can sell it and at least cover our mortgage traditionally. Yeah. You have a piece of land and somebody gives you, the bank gives you in theory $500,000 for the land. There's nothing on it. And it's sometimes difficult to sell land. Who's going to buy the land? So normally in land development, land has to be purchased out of the assets or the creativity of the developer, not through financial means. It's very difficult to get traditional financing for land itself.
Yeah. See, and that was the reason I brought that up, is because I've had clients in the past say, I'm just going to buy land. And I'm like, well, you need a lot of, usually it's 50% up front for a down payment, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Usually it's 50% down payment. So if you're selling at, If you're buying a lot, maybe unserviced at this price, $70,000. I just pulled that up from the sky.
Yeah.
It's 35% down, right? So you just purchased an unserviced lot. And then as you say, the city is not ready to take that on for terms of sewer and water. So that would be that you have to go out of your own pocket next to put in septic and well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're at step one where we've talked about unserviced lots, how to finance them 50% down traditionally.
Yeah.
And traditionally speaking, lenders and banks don't like giving you money for a land purchase because there is no home to resell, because homes is typically what is the asset that they're giving you the loan for.
Yeah.
The other side of this is making sure and confirming you have municipal zoning to put up the house that you want to put up.
Correct.
So let's just say we've successfully managed those tasks. What's the next step then? You've got zoning, you've got the lot, you've put the 50% down, you had the financing, now you need to develop the lot. What's the next step?
So you want to get to what we call pad ready. So you can build what you want to build, and it can be serviced. So at that point, you have a site on your property that you want your home to be. And so really you want that site and to the driveway. So you're going to connect the dots. So from whatever street you're on to where your house. So when I say pad ready, ultimately the pad is what your house is built on.
Okay.
So think of it like a stamp.
Yep.
So that's where your foundation is. So between that pad and the street, you have to put a driveway, could be a private road, and then you have to build the pad. So to do that, you basically have to make sure, for example, it's graded. You're not bumping into a water course. What they call geotechnical, you don't want to build a driveway on a sinkhole. So all of that at the end of the day, it's the civil engineering is you want that driveway or that private road connected to your home in a safe manner that meets a standard. And then your house is built, of course, by standard. So that pad, the foundation, all of that's done. So when you put your foundation in, you have confidence that it's not going to sink, settle, and all of this sort of thing. So at the end of the day, you build your house. So really, once you have the approvals, you want to get from the street to your home and your pad to have somebody come in to pour a foundation.
Okay. So you mentioned something that are graded. What is a graded lot and an ungraded lot? What's the difference?
So an ungraded lot is the natural topography of the land. So you take any land you have, it undulates, it has steep, it's all of this. What you need to do is grade that for a driveway and level it out.
Okay.
And so you need to level it out. So leveling it out, what a civil engineer does for you is he works with the land to say, for example, I'll give you an example. A tennis court has a 2% slope. Most people think a tennis court is flat. It's 2% because you have to have water run off of it. If it's flat, it goes in the middle.
Oh.
So there's a provincial standard. Most highways, with rare exception in Nova Scotia, they can't have a grade over 8%.
Oh, interesting, because the water can't stay on for hydroplaning.
Exactly.
Okay.
So when you go through, with rare exception, you go through the highlands of Cape Breton, but with rare exception, when you're driving through Nova Scotia and you're on a particularly steep road, highway, that's generally still not over 8%. But so imagine you buy a piece of land and it's kind of steep. So people have heard, not sure what I mean, the term cut and fill. Let's say you've got a piece of steep land, you want to put your house 200 feet in. Gorgeous view to look over a river, a lake, the ocean. But you've got to cut into that because it's steep. So when you have to cut into the land, what you do is you got to dig into it, and then there's basically access fill.
Okay.
So then you have to put that somewhere. Now, in some cases, you have land that's basically almost like in a cereal bowl.
Yeah.
It's in a depression. That's not good because when it rains, what is it going to do?
Set.
It's going to set and you have flooding, so you have to build it up. So most times you want a balance of cut and fill. You want to cut land in a certain way and that excess soil goes into it.
Yeah.
But where you put it in some cases, so that's what a floodplain is. That's what's gotten a lot of people in trouble. They've got great views of a river, but it's on a flat area, and they don't realize that at some point, now we've gotten a little more sophisticated with floodplain mapping, but when you hear of areas in Nova Scotia or Fredericton, most of Fredericton is in a floodplain area, or Winnipeg, when you get excessive rains or once in 100-year events,
flooding.
You get flooding.
Like Fredericton did a few years back.
Absolutely. Caused a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So that's what a civil engineer will do with you in a team that says, okay, we'll look at the floodplain mapping, we'll look at the grading. At the end of the day, what we want to make sure is that home home is settled in a way that when we go in there, we'll cut and fill it and make it stable. And you might have some undulating driveway, but at the end of the day is you don't want to have a driveway that's going up a complete hill.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have something sitting in a ravine.
Do you bring in the civil engineer while during the purchase process, or do you bring it in after you've purchased the lot?
Generally, after you purchase the lot's fine, because a professional real estate agent, along with maybe they hire somebody with a land development background to confirm it, but really in most municipalities, you can put a zoning letter in and say, look, I'm planning on doing a duplex, a single family home. Does the zoning match? And they will tell you yes or no. And then also that municipal department will tell you the servicing of it.
Okay.
Is it sewer and water at the end of it? So as long as you can get that in the letter as part of your due diligence within an agreement of purchase sale, your real estate professional will tell you, okay, Mr. Smith, it can be serviced with sewer and water or septic.
Yeah.
And basically your zoning would permit what you're planning, a bed and breakfast, a single family.
Okay.
Great. Now, some people may say before they buy it, they want to have an estimate of costs.
Yeah.
That's a personal choice between the person buying it, but they're the real estate professional, or they may say, I'll wait after the fact. I'm going to buy this because I love it, and I'll think about those details later. But what you got to do is get the municipal zoning and the servicing done.
Okay.
And then what a civil engineer or land development expert can do all for you is that driveway, cut and fill.
Yeah.
The
Make sure
construction,
you're on a floodplain.
all that sort of stuff can be done.
Okay. So we've purchased a lot. We've got zoning. We've now, the first next step is calling and bringing the civil engineer to map out what needs to be done. Okay, so we brought the civil engineer. They've said, this is where the driveway goes. This is where the pad's going to go.
Yeah.
Let's just say we bought an undeveloped lot for this example.
Yeah.
So there's still trees everywhere. Do we still, what's the next step then? After the civil engineer has mapped out everything that needs to be done in terms of land and fill, no floodplains, driveway, pad, what's the next step?
So at that point, you have a land. So think about what they call as a term detailed engineering design.
Okay.
That's the same thing as what we call a blueprint for land construction, as it is a blueprint for a house. So if you actually, at the point, if I just go quickly ahead for a sec, and you have a architect or a designer's plan for your house, you hand that off to a construction person and say, this is what I want my house to look like. That's no different for the land in getting the driveway in and getting the pad is that a civil engineer will create a blueprint or a construction plan called detailed engineering, where a road construction company or something similar can say, I has to see how this is graded. It's a blueprint to get me from the house to the driveway.
Yes.
And whether that's got culverts, whether that's got sewer and water. So that detailed engineering design is the blueprint for you to get the pad ready. And a civil engineer will create that for you, and you could hand that off to qualified construction professionals that will get you to that point.
Okay, so civil engineer gives us the blueprint.
Yes.
You hand that off to the construction company. They'll clear the lot,
Yeah.
put the driveway in, and put the pad in where it's supposed to go. And they'll also put, if we're doing septic and well, for example, they'll also map where the septic and well go or put it in.
They'll generally put it in because most times they're partnered up with a firm.
Yeah.
Now you can always bring a separate firm in, and that's a part of it. They'll basically say this is where the septic goes and the design and the wells, but they can do it with you, or they can do it. You do it separately. We like to keep it coordinated generally.
Yeah.
But the septic and the well people are working with the construction, the civil engineer, so it's all coordinated.
Of course.
Because at the end of the day, really what you're looking for is a driveway to be able to access your property and leave it. You want a septic system and a well, and you want the house. That's the big four: driveway, well, septic, and the house. Now, if you have sewer and water, the sewer and the power is the other one, but the sewer and the water will almost always follow basically the road and the driveway.
Yes, of course.
So they're always tied in, but either way, that's the four: sewer, water, or servicing, the road, and the pad.
Okay. So we've run the construction company. We're still on septic and well because that's for this example. We've now got the driveway, the pad, the septic, and the well installed.
Yeah.
Why is the pad so important? You said it's a postage stamp for the house. What makes that pad so important for the house?
So the pad is the structure the house goes on.
Yeah.
So think about this. Have any of us ever basically just went and said, I'm going to knock a fence in? Or I'm going to put a retaining wall in.
Yeah.
And you put a retaining wall in, it looks good for a day, and then it starts to settle, and then all of a sudden, 6 months later, your fence is crooked, it's fallen over.
Yeah.
That's because the structural soundness of how you put the fence in and the retaining wall wasn't done professionally.
Okay.
So the same thing. What that pad is that pad provides a structural base for a foundation.
Yeah. So you don't get the shifting of the soil underneath under the weight. And houses shift and move for 60 years before they actually settle.
Correct.
So you need that ground to be able to withhold and withstand the shifting of the weight on top of it. Because if you're going to put a house on top of it, I imagine you're putting a lot of weight on top of this soil.
Absolutely.
And it needs to support this. Because we talked about this in the past in the podcast that a condominium famously in Bedford, the engineer didn't support the pad well enough. I'm sure you've heard of this story in your time, and the back half of the condominium was shifting away off the edge of a cliff. That's just why you need to make sure your soil or ground level is on the pad foundationally can support the house that you put on top of it.
Well said. And if you ever hear the term load bearing, the engineers will use the term geotechnical, but geotechnical and load bearing are really the same thing. And what it says, whatever the load is, it could be an apartment building, it could be a commercial mall or a house, is that load, whatever the weight of your house is, will be appropriately through the foundation and pillars be able to settle on the land appropriately and not shift, not sink.
Yeah.
And then so over time. So once again, that's why you want a professional, because there's nothing worse like happened in Bedford. These people that had a condo and then they, would have spent millions of dollars to go correct the solution.
It's $50,000 per unit.
Yeah, just ugly.
Yeah.
So that's why that load bearing pad is crucial. So that way you can sleep at night to know that when the house is built, it's built on top of a engineer design pad.
Okay. So we got the engineer, got the pad done, everything's put in. Now we bring in the builder developer.
You got it.
Okay. So now we go find the builder to go and build the house that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So, and then they'll build the house and you get to move in.
Correct.
Typically speaking. Okay. That's actually a much more simple, straightforward process than I thought it was going to be and what I've been told. So I've got a few questions because people always want to know numbers.
Yeah.
So let's just say, for this example's sake, $70,000 purchase, $35,000 down payment. You purchased it. How much to bring out the civil engineer roughly? It might vary based on the size of acreage and things like that, but roughly to bring in a civil engineer to give you the land survey, how much does that typically cost?
Yeah. So for a kind of a standard residential lot, you would expect to spend between $2,000 and $2,500.
Okay.
And to get the civil design for, let's say, one house, you'd expect to spend between $2,000 and $2,500. So I would say to somebody, if you have a property and you're looking at one single family home, and there's nothing extraordinarily unique or odd about it, set aside what $5,000 would do for you is you would get your survey, your plot plan, and then a detailed engineer design that would get you the driveway and to the pad.
So we're at $40,000.
No, $5,000.
No, $35,000 down payment.
Oh, gotcha.
$5,000 for that.
Yeah, that's right.
$40,000 in so far.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we need to bring in the construction company to install the driveway, the pad, the septic, the well.
Yeah.
Typical single family home. How much are we looking at?
So we probably work with developers. We do probably 100 homes a year. So I'll give you a perfect example. I'll give you a serviced one and unserviced.
Okay.
So, and these are dollars right now. So there's been some escalation with the price of COVID. So give you an idea for pad ready serviced, which means sewer and water, the curb and sidewalk. We just did 96 homes in Spryfield last year.
Okay.
Now, if you know Spryfield, there's a lot of rock out there, very tough, but it is $3,000 a linear foot. Now, that's for a whole street. So to get an R2, which is two units, but it's the same price, to do a duplex semi in Spryfield is $65,000 for the lot. Pad ready.
Okay.
Now, if you paid the price for the lot itself, you would add that on.
Yeah.
But that's generally $65,000 for a service lot. That's pretty normal in most parts of Halifax.
Okay.
So once you have the access and you said, I want that lot, whether it's a single family home, now again, everything is equal, you would spend $60,000 to get a pad ready.
Okay.
Now to give you the price, generally unserviced, like septic and well, because you're having a culvert, the price is about a third. So where it's $3,000 a linear foot. So to give you an example, if a developer has 100 feet of road and it's $3,000 a linear foot, it's $300,000 to put a 100-foot cul-de-sac in.
Okay.
So that's
interesting.
Now, that same, if that was on septic and well,
Yeah.
you'd basically look at a third of the price. It's
$100,000.
$100,000 or $1,000 because you're not putting the sidewalk in off and the curbs and all that. So that's the difference. Generally speaking, everything being equal, it's a rough calculation. In a rural area or an area that's on septic and well, the cost is about a third compared to serviced.
Okay, and these are ballpark numbers.
Ballpark numbers,
of course.
yeah.
So we're now we're in 40, and you said 65, so we're looking at around 21.5.
Yeah.
So now we're up to 61.5 for total investment, but now we have a ready lot with septic and well, pad, and driveway in.
Yeah.
Cleared, done. Now we need to get the builder in. Yeah. Builders have range in prices based on finishes and based on what type of home you want. We're going to go for a box cookie cutter home because we're not going to build a unique live-in home because they have their own price points. Yeah. So when the client or purchaser goes to a builder, what's the average build price right now for a single family in Halifax today?
So in Halifax, you're looking at about minimum $200 a square foot, $200 to $250 a square foot.
Okay, math.
So if you had a 2,000 square foot home, which pretty standard home, you would expect to be $400,000 to $500,000.
So 2,000 square foot home. I'm on my calculator right now. 250 square foot is 500,000. 200 is 400,000.
Now, 2-3 years ago, those homes being built at 150. As you know, lumber shot up.
Yeah.
And services. And here's a quick rule of thumb that not all of your viewers are developers, but there's an old rule. This was taught to me when I was 22. And it's an amazing rule that, almost 35 years later, this holds up to the most scientific pro forma, generally speaking. Whatever you pay for the land to get pad ready, the price of your home needs to be 4 times minimum, 5 times preferably the value to make that up. So I'll give you an example. If you pay $100,000 for a pad ready lot, the house that gets built on that, if you were selling it, needs to be $400,000 to $500,000.
Oh, interesting.
And the reason is you think about you're putting costs in that and interest. And so, for example, that's why you see developments in certain places. So that's why on the peninsula you see a lot of development. It gets slower maybe down in Cow Bay or some areas because what happens is if the price of the lot and the land is too high, you can't get the price of the home to make up for it. And so it's an interesting dynamic. So again, obviously people that are buying their home as a primary residence aren't looking to make maybe a profit per se, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb is that whatever you pay for that land and getting it pad ready, you want the house on it to be 4 to 5 times the value.
So just for our example, we're paying $61.5 for lot pad ready done. 4 to 6 times, you're looking at, 4 to 5 times, you're looking at 240 to 300,000.
Correct.
Now, is that for the house to be built, or is that all in?
That's generally all in.
All in.
Yeah.
So 240 to 300K once you purchased to the end.
Yeah.
Here's a question: how do you? Because most people don't have $300,000 in the bank to develop a lot. So how do people, the average consumer, how do they finance this whole endeavor? Is it just through multiple loans, through banks or lending parties?
Again, what private developers do, like here's an interesting question, like you said earlier. So think about the difference, like the Starbucks analogy. You have a client, Jason, that's looking at it. There's 4 major steps to land and value. So the final step is basically the pad-ready construction. Yeah. That's what we all know. You go through certain areas like a West Bedford or whatever, Bedford South, and there's a lot, you like it, the home's on it, you buy it. Then there's raw land. Unserviced. There's 2 major steps in between this, and this is why the banks get nervous. So when you have raw land, with rare exception, you need some sort of approval. Yeah. You have to get a subdivision approval. You have to get a rezoning approval. Well, right away, now there's different types of approval. So for example, subdivision approval is what they often call as of right. So as of right means there's no council involved, there's no public. If you want to go chop up land and you're meeting the rules, you will basically have to be approved. So in banking terms and land development, as of right processes are always sought out. A permit, for example, if you have an R1 zone single family property and you go in for a permit to build a single family home, and it matches it. There's no council, there's no public. Generally, the planning development department will issue a permit.
Yeah.
So that's as of right. However, if you're trying to get something done that doesn't meet the zone, then you get what they call discretionary planning, which means now you got to get a rezoning or development agreement. There's planning staff, there's public, the council. They could say no. So it's not only what you're trying to do is that what you're trying to do approved as of right, or is it discretionary? So, for example, you go to Wolfville, you buy a property that's zoned R1 that allows a single-family home. You want to build a duplex.
Yep.
You and your wife live on one side, and you want to rent out the other. However, the zone is R1. In order to get the duplex, you have to rezone that to R2, which means at the end of the day, council has to say yes or no.
Yep.
And you're not guaranteed that result. But even with subdivision, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a process. It could take a year or two. So when you come and you get that pad-ready lot from a developer, he could have spent 5 years getting West Bedford ready.
Yes.
And then the next step is why banks don't like it, which is pad-ready. The last thing a financial institution want to have happen is to have somebody out there building a road or a major driveway, and all of a sudden they go bankrupt or have an issue,
Yep.
and then the bank says, all of a sudden now we got to take over the road or whatever. Once you have it pad ready, even if you start the house and there's a problem, it's much easier to bring somebody in to finish the house.
Yeah.
Than to try to all of a sudden finish a driveway, get a septic system, because the bank is not a developer.
Yeah.
So that's why they like dealing with pad ready. So when you went to a bank and you said, by the way, I bought 10 acres in wherever, the valley.
Yep.
And on those 10 acres, I want to do 5 septic systems and wells, 2 acres apiece.
Yep.
Mr. Banker, can you give me $1 million to build the driveway and all that? Good luck. Now, if you found a way through private investors and your own resources,
to raise capital, get the million, develop them all pad ready.
You go to a bank, they knock on your door within reason. Because at that point, you found a way to buy the land, to get the driveway in, the septic, the well, the pad ready. The risk at that point
is minimal.
Is minimal because now you're into a building asset.
Yeah.
And then the risk it really is at that point is what can I build for what price and get a maximum price for it. But that's what separates the developers from even the builders is the risk, the time, the approvals, the costs, getting private investment money to get it pad ready. Because if you could go to a bank and get land bought, raw land, and get it pad ready, respectfully, everybody would do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not easy. Yeah. And that one I mentioned earlier where in Spryfield, we got 350 semis and we just sold 96 pad-ready lots last year. We started that in 2013.
Herring Cove Road, right?
Herring Cove called Macintosh Estates.
Yeah.
So the first 96 of the 350, we started in 2013. The first 96 in phase 1 were pad-ready certified by the municipality in December 2019.
6 years.
6 years.
6 years of just
grinding away and all. Now the developer, my client, sold it, but that's in Halifax, and it's a development. But most decent sized pieces of land from the moment you buy it to the point that it's pad ready and you got a house on it to rent or sell, you're looking at 5 to 7 years. And so there's not a lot of businesses and folks. Think about this. How many businesses you're aware of buy something and they don't sell it until 5-7 years later?
Not many.
Not many. It takes a lot of resources.
So, okay. We're going into the development aspect, which I want to get into, but I want to finish off the single consumer just for their own sake. When you say 5 to 7 years to get this thing ready, is that across everything?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So the municipalities, wherever you are, obviously because what would happen is in those larger developments, you're taking over streets.
Yeah.
There's parks involved.
Yeah.
So if you have a client or a consumer out there that's just doing a single family home, that depending on which municipality you're in, that's typically a 3 to 6 month journey.
I was going to say that can't be that long,
No.
or else new houses would just be dead.
No. So you would go to your municipality, and they often will have what they call a breaking soil or a lot grading permit.
Yeah.
Which simply means, if you're going to connect to a major road.
Yeah.
Or a subdivision road, the municipality municipality wants to approve that because they want to make sure you're not on a curve. But, if you have your plans in place, depending on the time of year, within 3 to 6 months, you have an approval.
Okay.
And then that allows you to go out and say, okay, at this point, I want to do lot grading on it. The other thing the municipality wants to do is, you see this with swimming pools and garages. They don't want people all of a sudden building structures in a floodplain or too close to somebody's property. So they want to see your plan. They look at your plan, which is, again, is that detailed civil engineering, and say, okay, we see what you're planning on doing here. Here's your driveway. Here's your pad. You're not in a floodplain. You're not too close to Mr. Smith's property. Go ahead. We'll come out and inspect it. But, then you're into a process that's fairly step by step.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to wrap up the single consumer.
Yeah.
So 70,000 purchase price, unserviced lot, 35,000 in for down payment, 50%. Then you got your $5,000 for your civil engineering report to take to the construction company to put in the pad, the septic, the well, the driveway.
Yeah. That's
going to run you up to 1/3 of the initial cost for sewer and water is for septic and well. That is 21,500 by rough estimations. We're at 61.5. Then to put the actual house on, because we're pad ready, which is the most valuable time that a bank will step in. We're pad ready. We can go get a loan from the bank to fund the house build. Yeah. We've got a builder. 4 to 5 times the cost is going to run us up to $240,000, $300,000 all in to build, start to finish, 3 to 6 months. Key indoor build.
Correct.
That is assuming nothing has gone wrong, which something will always go wrong.
Something always goes wrong. So I would only add two of those potentially where you are is in some areas you have to get a groundwater assessment.
Okay.
So if you're going to put a well in, you want to make sure that you're near the water table.
Okay.
So depending on what those can run generally for a single family $2,500, and then the other thing you have to realize is where does your septic system go? So the septic system can't be too close to water.
That'd be 50 feet apart.
50 feet apart.
By code today.
By code, so far from a road, a driveway, this sort of thing from the house. So oftentimes you might have to get a test pit done or two.
Yeah.
So again, if you laid out, depending on the severity of it, it could be $5,000 to $10,000. We usually use $5,000 to get a test pit done and get the groundwater tested.
Okay.
And then okay, if my well is here and my septic is here, then my house should be here. So what you want to do is get that done, because in some cases, even though you may have a 2-acre property, there's a primary place to put your well and your septic. And then there's always what we call this term buildable envelope. So you might have a 2-acre property, but if you take out really steep slope, really bad rock, setbacks from property lines, floodplains, wetlands, there's a sweet spot on every piece of property where a pad and a house could be built.
Yeah.
And that's what you're always trying to find. In some cases, it's bigger or smaller.
Yeah. Okay. So 305, by our example, 305, 310, 320 all in.
You got it.
3 to 6 months if you have no problems. But as we all know, building a house, shortage of lumber, stock prices go up, prices fall. Anyway, that is building a house.
Yeah.
What you need to do step by step.
Correct.
Crap. That's a lot of work.
And that's to your point. Again, it's like Starbucks. Like I have 2 cups of coffee a day.
Yeah.
That's all I have. And I make them myself.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. Once in a while I'll get a coffee out somewheres and I pay a price, but it's the convenience.
Yes.
So, again, there's some people like my father, God love him, was incredibly handy. He built our garage. He would take it on, but once again, you think about this, you take this on, do you have the time?
Yeah.
So there's people that actually have the technical skills, but they have another job, and then that causes problems because they're not watching it.
Yep.
And dealing with trades is you have to be there. Sometimes trades are on beck and call.
Yep.
You're not there, you lose the trade, you can't get them back for a couple of weeks.
Yep.
So there's professional builders and developers. This is what they do every single day. And so it's like anything else. I pour my cup of coffee in the morning. I'm getting it instant from Starbucks, or not Starbucks, from Loblaws.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I want to go grind my own coffee and all of this, sure. Do I have the time? Do I know what I'm doing? So like I say to anybody, it's like when you take on renovations. If you can do your own renovations and you're technically good, as you know, Jason, you can save a lot of money, you can make money, but it's a time commitment. Do you have the expertise? And then even if you know your renovations, my father was the handiest guy. He's built homes, once upon a time, but he always brought the electrician in. Because he always said to me, the electrical is the one thing, if that's not done well in the house, it could kill you, cause a fire. So no matter, and he was, actually could do electrical, but he always brought the electrician in. So even if you're handy, sometimes bring the pro in, even at the right time.
I wish my grandfather had your father's rule of thumb. My grandfather liked to do his own electrical.
Yeah. And you know what? You may not have an issue.
Listen, no fire yet.
No fire.
But that house is, I can't wait for them to try and sell it.
Overwired a little bit?
Overwired, and he's, we're not going to get into that, but that's a different story. Okay, that is how you develop a house, start to finish. Now, I'm really interested to get into developers, because this is a fascinating thing for me, is in a sense of they buy, as you mentioned in one of your examples, 100 acres. But then they go through, they could be 5 to 7 years before they can even start doing anything with it. Yeah. What is the holdup on that, and why?
So, I mean, it depends really in the municipality, but it's the approval process. So I'll go back to that one I mentioned a couple times as an example, the Macintosh estates.
Yeah.
So you buy this piece of land. So most municipalities, what they want you to do is do a concept plan first. So what a concept plan is, it's a fancy sketch.
Yep.
Done by professionals that says, here's 100 acres. We want to have 5 streets, 350. So most municipalities will look at the sketch, and in that sketch, they'll look at things, okay, like the street layout, the length of the road, the connections, and all of this. And they'll say, okay, the sketch makes sense. Now, to get the concept approval approved, it could take anywhere from 6 months to a year. So you can imagine if you're going to put 350 homes on the Herring Cove Road, you need to do a traffic study.
Yeah. And
then you also have to do a service and capacity study. If there's 350 homes and 350 families, can the Herring Cove sewage treatment plant handle it? And so, see, what happens in some parts of the municipality, the community, the sewage treatment plant is fine, but, there's all these secondary pipes that go to the plant. So we've run into cases that even though the treatment plant has lots of capacity, the pipes going to the plant are extremely old and narrow. So what happens is been developments that have been held up, not because the sewage treatment plant doesn't have the capacity, but the pipes are so old, they're not wide enough. They were built, for example, 40, 50 years ago, and developments downstream have happened, and the pipes are at capacity, and that's an issue. So the pipes have to be upgraded. So, you as a developer, it's the same kind of issue. You have to make sure the traffic can handle it, and the sewer and the water, whether you do your own single-family home as a consumer, or whether you do 100 for the developer, it's the same thing. Can you get access to the highway? So we've all driven in parts of the Bedford Highway, which we would say is unsafe. The highway is busy, but you come around a certain corner and there's a commercial use come out and you say, wow. Well, it's the same thing with the city. They don't want, for example, 60 homes coming out of a certain street at a certain part of the road. So they want to make sure that your driveway to a major subdivision is lined up in the right way.
Yep.
And so you take care of that sort of thing and look at it. So you have to make sure the traffic is good, the sewer and the water is good, the plant can handle it, the secondary lines can handle it. And in some cases, what the municipality will do is say, your 350 unit home development needs a 12-inch line, but in behind you is 1,000 acres. So we want you to build a 20-inch line. You'll pay for the 12 inches. The municipality will pay for the difference. So when the next guy develops, that pipe is large enough
that we can have the extra homes, and we don't have to go through this whole thing again.
Yeah. So the municipality's gotten a little more sophisticated. But once that concept plan is approved, and the reason the municipality wants to do that is they don't want a developer or builder going out and spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that detailed engineering design. The same thing you would do for your one home consumer.
With a civil engineer.
And then all of a sudden come back and say, well, your street's not in the right place. This is not in the right place. Because when they approve the concept, what they're saying, in principle, we approve the sketch.
Yes.
Now go into the detail. Show us the sewer and water where it's going to be placed. Show us the driveway. Show us the lot grading. And that process is very detailed because in a municipality, you have parks.
Yeah.
You have development engineering, you have planning, you have Halifax Water, because at the end of the day, they're ultimately going to take over the sewer and water beneath these streets.
Yeah, that you have now built for them to have.
They're going to take over the street.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure at the end of the day, and that's why they do tests for pressure on the sewer and water. They want to make sure the street is built to a certain standard because they're going to keep it forever and a day. And so that's where they're, evaluating it, testing it. So when you come and you see a brand new subdivision that has, municipal streets and sidewalks, the developer's built that. He's done the design according to the concept sketch. It has to meet certain standards. Same thing, geotechnical. So I'm so old in this business. I remember once upon a time when you built this road, you could put organic material in it. So below the actual asphalt, there's soil. So you can appreciate nowadays, you don't want organic material in there like tree trunks because that rots.
Yes.
And it causes pockets.
Yeah.
And that settles. 20 years ago, there was streets built with organic material.
Oh, wow.
And so, and of course, like everything else, you evolve and you understand. So now, when you ever go through a subdivision when it's being built, some places you'll see piles of rock and tree trunks off to the side. So that's why when you're doing the digging in a subdivision, the developer has to take all that organic material, and you actually can't even use too big a rock. So there's a certain size of rock that can be in the roadbed, because again, like everything else, if you have too big a rock, it causes pockets.
Yeah.
Or it has to be crushed. So if you ever go through some subdivisions, you'll see developers actually have crushers on site.
Yeah.
But that soil that gets packed down for that road has to have only a certain size of rock and no organic material, or the organic material is minimal because you want it packed.
Yes.
And this is like anything else. You make a snowball or anything else, and there's other things in it.
Yeah.
The snowball becomes jagged, whatever else. If it's pure snow, you can make it a real tight snowball. No different than a road. So all that comes into it. So going all that back and forth between the road bed, parks, for example, when you're going into a major subdivision, you have parks, all that's negotiated, and there's back and forth. And, that process, as I mentioned earlier, from the time you put the concept approval in to the time you have a major subdivision done, it could take 5 years. Now, if you're talking subdividing 3 or 4 lots,
easy.
That could be 6 months to a year.
Yeah, because you're only putting in a street.
You're putting in a street or a major, little kind of driveway. But when you get into the big ones, in the municipality, and I understand this, they have a responsibility to the public because they don't want to come back. And for example, here's a warranty. So this is why it's also tough. If that road, and if you ever hear the term primary services, primary is sewer and water in the street.
Yeah.
Secondary is the curb, the sidewalk, the street trees. Well, you have to have warranties now in the municipality for 2 years. So that way, if there's a problem with the street,
in 2 years,
sidewalk, or the sewer and water, the developer has to come back and fix it.
Oh, jeez.
Or if the developer takes off or is in a bad financial situation, the municipality will keep their bond, hire somebody to come in and fix it. Because to your point earlier, you mentioned about settling. Generally, after 2 years, you'll know.
Yeah.
So after 2 years, that street that's in, that sidewalk, whatever is going to happen, it's settled. You're pretty confident after 2 years it is what it is. And then the developer can get their bond back. But that's why it's expensive. So if you've got, I'll give you an example, when we built this 350 unit development I talked about, I mean, the entire road cost for those 96 pad ready lots was roughly $5.6 million, which worked out to be about $65,000 a lot, we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But the developer at the end of the day, when you did all of that, had put up bonds when everything was done and everything else of close to $800,000.
Huh.
And then you keep those. So that's money that's out of the developer's pocket. And then after 2 years, assuming there's no issue, the municipality does an inspection with the developers and civil engineering and say, okay, that street's been chipped or something, that particular part of the sewer, the pressure's not right. No, you either got to fix it, or we're going to keep the amount of money that we're going to
put a bond
on to keep it.
We're going to take it out of the $800K.
You got it.
Bring it our standard that we're looking for.
You got it.
That's what. And okay, that just for example, that $5.6 million you guys spent on driveways.
Yeah.
You fronted that cash.
Yeah. So what happened is we came off the Herring Cove Road.
Yeah.
And it's called Gala Court. And when you drive up Gala Court, you'll see 3 cul-de-sacs.
Yep.
And a main neck of a street. And there's 96 pad-ready lots for semis. To get those 96 ready, so you had public streets.
Yep.
You had sidewalks, curbs, street trees, everything ready to put the pads, everything in was $5.6 million.
Trees, roads, everything in
turnkey.
there.
The only thing that was missing at that point, so when a builder came in, like Starbucks, the builder said, okay, all that's been done. Don't have to worry about it. I have a pad now that I can put a footing in and a foundation for that semi-detached lot. So I can go down to the city with my permit for my house construction, and I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
And the builder says, I don't want to deal with any of that other stuff. I want to go build a house. They'll pay you for the pad ready.
Yeah.
So that goes back, not to skip, but that goes back to really the 3 main values of land. So your client, your customer bought the raw land. They paid a value for it.
Yeah.
If they need to go get a subdivision approval, that's what they call the paper value.
Yes.
So now they have a piece of paper. So even they could sell that paper to somebody and said, I spent the money, the time to get the survey done. You sell the paper. And then the third value is the pad ready. And so there's people out there, when you hear them call flipping paper, let's say, for example, in the North End, and they have a 1 acre property on a corner, and it's got a townhouse on it. And they go get a municipal approval to build a 6-story, 70 unit. Through a development agreement. All of a sudden, they may never build it, but they've got that approved. Not easy to get approval. They can sell that 6-story, 70 unit to a builder or developer. They're selling the paper.
Who can build it and then reap the benefits of the return.
Exactly.
Man, okay.
So that's, always think of that as the 4 values of land: raw, as is, paper approved.
Yeah.
Yes, even having a permit. At the end of the day, we had a client we worked with that went and got architectural drawings for a 3-story, 32-unit apartment building. The permit was $113,000, but it took him 4 months to do the drawings and all that. But when he sold the property, that had value because somebody wanted to go right away.
Yeah.
So he sold. So you can sell the paper as a permit, subdivision, or a development agreement.
Okay.
And then the pad ready is the big one because nobody finances that, but builders love that because all the work is done for them.
Yeah. So when you guys spent $5.6 million to develop Macintosh,
Yeah.
the builder just came in and bought the pads.
Bought the pads, all of it was taken care of, and these pads have that lovely HRM certification.
Yeah.
So a certified pad is the equivalent to an occupancy permit for a home.
Okay.
When you have an occupancy permit, you know that the municipality has looked over, it's been inspected, and it meets the building code.
Yes.
A certified pad from the city tells you that the sewer, the water, the pad has been approved by the municipality.
Everything's in place. Turnkey.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know what turnkey is, it basically just means you're moving into a move-in ready home.
You got it.
You don't need to do any renovations to it. It's coming as is, but it's ready for what you want to do with it.
You got it. And turnkey and building for a pad means that builder can go get a building permit for their house design.
Tomorrow. To go and be able to build your house.
Exactly.
Or if they're selling each lot individually and they're paying on the facsimiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, facsimiles are your building blueprints for what they're willing to pay, build on that pad if you were willing to pay the price.
100% correct.
Yeah. Holy crap, you jumped a lot. Okay. So with that being said, the developer, you guys put up $5.6 million of your own cash. Now, was that all cash, or did you get loans or put money? Like you put the bond $800K, and did you get a loan from the bank, or is that all everything you guys had to put up front?
So the developer client there, that was all their resources. So if you go to a road builder,
yeah.
So imagine a road builder, for example, like Atlantic Road or a Dexter, they're doing a job.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, they also typically want to get paid. I mean, they'll, depending on who you are, your reputation, they'll work with you to some extent. So for example, if it's $5.6 million, would you pay a certain amount a year later so you could get some lots sold?
Yeah.
Now in this particular case, of the 96 pad ready lots, 86 of the homes have been sold within a year. That's how hot the real estate market is, which you know, Jason.
Yeah.
In most cases, if you sold 30 to 35. Now, this particular developer...
30 to 35 months.
homes a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's been kind of a standard that if you can sell 30 to 35 homes in a subdivision a year, that's a pretty good phase.
Okay.
In this particular one, because it's Spryfield,
86, hot market, great location, great timing.
You got it.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, like anything in life, as you know, you bring a plumber in and he's going to do 3 months worth of work for you. And let's say it's $5,000. And you say to him, like, you know, can I pay you over 6 months? You'll pay a certain fee. If you say to that plumber, I'll pay you cash within 1 month.
Cheaper amount.
You'll get a cheaper amount. Yeah. So, you know, the clients in these cases basically were cash.
Yeah.
And, you know, that gets you certain things. And at the end of the day, so again, it's all circumstances. Like anybody that's owned a business or their own personal finances, there's always cash flow. Like I'm sitting in front of Jason's very nice television.
75 inches.
75 inches. It's great for a podcast. It's even greater for my Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Brady.
It's too big for the room, but that's a different story.
Beautiful TV. But I mean, you know, if Jason and his partner is sitting down here and looking at it saying you could have paid full cash, maybe you financed it over a year and you have a certain amount of cash flow, it's no different. So when people look at buying homes and, you know, land development, the principles are the same. You have a certain amount of cash. There's a certain amount of risk. How much cash do you do out? Do you extend it? Anything in life you extend, the rule of thumb is it costs you more money.
Yep. To be fair to that analogy, we paid cash.
And it's done.
It's done.
And I've got certain clients, and it's like anything else. Sometimes when you start your career, I mean, you don't have as much cash, so you do whatever you can to kind of beg, borrow, to make it happen. And at certain points in your career, say, I'm paying cash to whether it's a road builder or a builder, and I pay cash, that speaks volumes.
Same principles.
And it's really no different than a developer or your personal finances. We all go through the same thing. You have so much money, you make so much money, and do you have access to so much money?
Yeah.
And you make those business decisions every day. The only difference here is we're talking $5.6 million road versus that discussion earlier, which might be a $65,000 pad-ready lot in Wolfville.
Yeah.
Or it could be in Cow Bay.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay, I want to bring in this topic for a little more general audience in a sense of right now we have a housing crisis in Halifax. Yeah. You work in planning development, so you understand where subdivisions are going. What subdivisions are on the horizon for the city? Because we do need housing. Are there any planned or in approvals or second approvals that we're waiting for housing? And how far out are they, if you know of any?
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, in your real estate business, Jason, I mean, right now we've got, I mean, unprecedented. I've been at this for 34 years. Unprecedented demand. And a record low supply. I mean, I saw the recent HRM and CMHC population statistics about a month ago. So it was phenomenal. So today, Halifax's population is 448,000 people. So we're getting close to 1 million. The projection until 2031, so the next 10 years, is between 550 and 640,000.
What?
So the projection is over the next decade, Halifax will grow by another 100 to 190,000. And again, those are projections, but it's phenomenal because, you know, over the last couple of years, if you look at the real estate market, Halifax percentage-wise has been the second fastest growing population in Canada, percentage-wise, not total, only to Toronto. We've had this highest increase in real estate value in Canada other than Ottawa. And we've had the lowest apartment vacancy rate that's averaged between 1 to 1.9%. So to put that in perspective, for 20 years, between, I'll say, roughly 2000 and 2019, the average vacancy rate in Halifax was about 3 to 3.4%. So for every 100 apartment units, it'd be 3 vacant. That's considered balanced. We'll say about 1.5%, which everybody knows has somebody, themselves or a family or friend, they can't get an apartment. Or its price has gone up simply because the vacancy rate is 1.5%. So for every 100 units, there's 1.5. So we have 51,000 apartment units in the city. If you do the math at 1.5%, you basically have 1.5% available. You have about 750 apartment units available at any one time because we're at 1.5%. So we have a serious shortage of apartment units. And on the housing side, because certain projects that haven't been approved, major developments like the next wave of Bedford South and West Bedfords, they're not there. And so there, and you know this from your real estate business, there's a serious shortage of new construction. And that's available land. So, I mean, you know, Bedford South is pretty well fully developed. West Bedford is built out. A lot of the other, like Rockingham South, are built out. So some of those next generation of major developments coming on board haven't come on board yet.
Yeah.
And so we're waiting for those to come on board. They've been slower than anticipated. But, you know, that's one of the reasons, too, because of the market where places like Spryfield is selling so quickly, because there is a little bit of homes out there. But it's unprecedented demand. And the supply hasn't kept up. And that's what's caused the affordable prices, because you know as anything else, right? If you need a 75-inch television for your podcast and your personal use or business.
Personal use, I need big movies.
There you go. And there's only 3 in the city? Wonder what the price would be.
I'm paying a premium.
You're paying a premium.
And I'm probably bidding a war against some
You're
other
bidding a war.
Muppet who wants to watch some Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
You got it. I'm going to pay for that. And then the other thing that's been fascinating, I've never seen occur before, which we know is, you know, I'm part Cape Breton, part Newfoundlander, so I have a ton of relatives that worked in the oil industry in Edmonton, Alberta. They're older now. A lot of people, when they get older, want to come back to where they were born. So they're coming back to Halifax. And they've been in Edmonton, Calgary, which is their largest city. So they've sold their homes for $1.5 million, $1.6 million. They're coming back. They're looking for real estate.
Yep.
As you know, in your real estate business, there's a lot of people that are retiring that want to come back to Halifax or like Halifax from Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Vancouver. They're coming back. I had a friend, for example, him and his wife were in Ottawa for 10 years, came back a year ago, sold their home for $2.2 million. He's got 2 daughters, comes back, buys a home in a certain place, and he knows, he told me he spent $780,000 for it. He said, Kev, I know this place is worth $630 probably, but my family loves it. I like it. I just sold my place in, you know, Ottawa for 2.2. I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
And then we have a ton of people coming in from Mexico, Israel, India. I have clients. I've picked up probably 15 clients from those areas. You know, we've always had a large population from China and the Middle East, but now it's from India, Mexico, Israel coming, because what the pandemic did is it shone a light on Halifax and Nova Scotia. You know, watch CNN for months and months. We were one of the safest places in the world. And people picked up on that.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, you know, you happen to come here and know somebody, beautiful city, great educational system, a certain lifestyle. And then the other thing the pandemic did was put a light on the fact that people may want to have a different perspective of work-life balance.
Yep.
And so maybe they don't want to put a certain grind in maybe the larger city. So not only were we naturally growing to 448,000, but there's a lot of people moving back that are coming in the last chapter of life that lived here. There's a lot of people looking for more of a work-life balance. There's a lot of immigration coming in. So Halifax is getting very close to 500,000, and it's growing and it's growing, and I believe it's going to continue to grow. And if you take the more conservative estimate and you say 100,000 or 10,000, well, you know, generally speaking, you need a residential dwelling for every 2.5 people. So if 100,000 people move to Halifax, you need to have 40,000 dwelling units, whether that's apartment or housing, what I call ground level, single family, duplex, townhouse, to accommodate them. The usual rule of thumb we use is 60% ground level and 40% apartment. So again, that 100,000 people will need 40,000 dwelling units to live in. We're going to have to add to the housing stock here in 10 years. So that's the great challenge of the municipality, is not only finding affordable, but there's a term now that we're throwing around in the development community. There's not only affordable. So depending on your definition of affordable, and I'm not talking subsidized housing, that's a different need.
Different thing. Yeah.
Different need. But affordable, like HRM defines affordable. So when you hear developers looking for bonus density for affordable on, it's 30% below fair market value. As an example, if a developer has a 1-bedroom that's $1,000.
I was going to say easy number, $1,000.
$1,000.
30% is 700.
700. So for them to get some sort of bonus density, they have to keep that unit $700 on the market for 15 years, and they can only raise the rent by the price of inflation. So to go back, the average real estate in HRM for 20 years, from about 2000 to 2019, was about 5.5%, and inflation was about 2.2%. So again, that's affordable is 30%, but now we're using the word attainable, because try to find new construction in the city that's under 400,000. Tough. So now we're hearing the word attainable, which means obtainable. 50% of the population can obtain it. So if there's a house on the market for 400,000, what can the average Haligonian Nova Scotian afford that? Based on a mortgage from usually a traditional bank.
50%.
50%. So, there's affordable, the 30% below, there's obtainable, but all that comes from simple supply and demand. And a perfect example of how this has happened is that Macintosh Estates I mentioned earlier. The first home of the 96 in phase 1 that went and was sold in May of 2020 was sold for $289,000 for a new semi. Wow. Pretty reasonable price. The last one, and there's only 10 left. Now the last one is in a nice part of the cul-de-sac and all that, but it's sold for $550,000. So in 1 year, you are basically double.
That's the average home price in Halifax went up by 130 in 2020. From 2020 to 2021, May 2020 to May 2021.
There you go.
You beat the market gains by another 100.
Wow. There you go. And you know what it is? It's like anything in life we talked about. It's supply and demand, and we have a perfect storm, which we're trying to address, which is we have record demand and we have record low supply on both the apartment and the housing side, the ground level.
Yeah.
And so when those two factors come in, and then the third thing that adds to that is the influx of people not from Halifax that have cash.
Yep, and don't care.
And so all of a sudden they'll pay a premium.
They don't care.
And so you put those three factors together, record supply or record low supply, record demand, and a consumer market that will spend a premium, it naturally puts the prices up. And so our challenge as a development community is to meet this demand over the next decade.
A few things there. Yeah. First off, when we talk about supply and demand, I hear this a lot in terms of like my career, my profession, always saying, "Oh, it's supply and demand. When the demand goes and we get supply back, houses will drop in price." There's one thing in real estate that is never really taken into consideration, and that's location.
Yeah,
you can't recreate location. You guys built 96 new homes in that Macintosh development. You just said one sold at $550. What do you think that does to price points in the Halifax Peninsula, or even closer on Armdale, the neighborhood next door, Jollymore, which is right next door to that development? What do you think those sellers, when they go to sell, are going to ask for their home after seeing that sell at $550?
Well, I think, you raise another interesting point, Jason. How many of your clients or mine say, "Oh, there's a crash coming, or there's a correction."
Doesn't exist.
And I say two reasons. Halifax in Canada for 30 years had one of the most underappreciated real estate.
Yeah.
So part of this is a bit of catch up.
Yeah.
For 30 years. The second thing is Halifax is more like Montreal, Vancouver, we're peninsula. And why that's important is there's only one north end. There's only one west end. There's one. Now, we can continue to go out like most cities do. So you can go towards the
urban
Talon. Yeah, you can go towards a little bit Beaver Bank.
Yeah.
And you can go towards Purcell's Cove. But those areas that exist like Armdale, Fairview, the West End, at the end of the day, they're only going to significantly increase.
Yeah.
Because as we look at 2020, 2030, if you're a family that wants to come to Halifax, if you're somebody that's coming in from outside of it, and you want to be near the core, and this is what happened in Spryfield. I know some of the buyers, they look at it and say, we got the Macintosh run, the Williams Spry, J.L. Ilsey's building a new school. We got those Macintosh trails. We got public transit just outside our door. We're 10 minutes from the city. how many places in Canada in the world can you get in your car and be in downtown in 15 minutes? And so they look at it, and for them, it's interesting because where they're coming from or they're local, they'll spend $550,000 not think about it.
They won't blink.
They won't blink. Where, I grew up in Armdale, and I have to shake my head thinking, if you told me 2 years ago you'd sell a semi in Spryfield for $550, I'd say that's crazy.
I would have bought them all.
But again, I can't think of, as the Kevin that grew up in Armdale in the 1960s.
No, it has to realistic to the Kevin that lives in Halifax in 2021.
2021. So I think what it's going to do is you're only going to see its increase. And one example, I had a client, a friend, that got a home designed 2 years ago for Fall River. And, they wanted to move from Bedford. So they had this home there. They could have locked in for $500,000. So it's a husband and wife and 2 kids. They didn't buy and lock in the lot. And I told them as friends, I said, please, I could see this coming.
Yeah.
To this extent, I don't think nobody expected, but I could see a supply issue. And I said to them, please, lock it in because Fall River is a desirable area. Then they went back and they took the exact same design, the exact same builder, exact same lot in the same subdivision, $890,000. So in 2 years, it went from 500 to 890, and they even took it. I gave them 3 other builders to price it, and I said to them, "Look, you may get a 5% difference.
You're not going to get anywhere near 5.
No, but
So there's a lot of stories like that, though.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stories
There
of
is.
people who bought lots
Yeah.
at certain prices and didn't lock in.
Yeah.
And then now I've heard of stories of people who have to sell and the house isn't finished being built.
yeah, it's unfortunate
Because of the situation with the rise in material costs. It's quite you couldn't fathom this even a year ago. You can see the statistics that we are not to what we see every day. We can't, the fact that the immigration number you dropped just now of almost 190,000 in the next 10 years. I mean, to me, if you break it down statistical math, right? Most simplified terms, 190,000 is almost 20,000 new people a year. Where are 20,000 new people going to live? And if 40%, right, as the stat you mentioned, so you need 4,000 homes or 4,000 apartments. Where are you getting we have under 600 single family homes for sale on all of HRM.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge challenge. And, let's even take the most conservative number and say it's 100,000.
10,000 a year.
I mean, that's an enormous population growth because, you're going from 450,000 to 550 in a decade. And so what will happen is people that have made the decision to go to Halifax is like anyone. What they'll do then is they'll go in the outer perimeter.
Yep.
So if they have to, for example, go to Lance or Helmsdale, if they have to go to Windsor,
they're going.
They'll go to the Valley, and they'll go for one of 2 reasons because those are still areas you can get a $250,000-$300,000 home.
Yeah.
Or they'll go because there's nothing available. And the other dynamic of this, which you would know even better than I in the business, which is startling, we were doing a development. And we needed to pick up a lot that has single family home on it. And it's in Spryfield also. It is a very, very old home.
Okay.
It's assessed for $130,000. Now it's old. But
assessments don't matter.
They don't matter. And so on the market, we figured it would probably go for $250,000. It was one of these 1,200 square foot old homes. And it was an eye-opener for me. We offered the couple $325,000.
Yep.
And their mortgage was paid, and they were in their early 50s. And I don't get shocked very often, but this shocked me. They sat down, they said, Kev, we really appreciate this offer. If you had come to us 2 years ago, but here's our problem. We work in Halifax. Our mortgage is paid. If we accept this, what are we supposed to buy? Where can we go buy a new home for $350,000, and we're 10 years from retirement? We'd probably have to rent. So we can sit in our place right now, not pay a mortgage, not rent, and then in 10 years we'll be able to sell it. And even though your offer is double what probably it would be worth in normal times, they can't sell it. So there's people that want to sell their homes, but they're not selling them because they can't find anything equivalent unless they want to go 45 or an hour outside the city. So you know this, I mean, your real estate business, it's an incredible once-in-a-lifetime dynamic between record demand, record low supply, record low, and here's the other thing too, what drives up the vacancy rate in apartments. If people can't historically find those homes that were in that $250,000, $300,000 range, what do they have to do? They have to rent.
Yeah.
So there's people renting now that may not normally buy. Yeah. And then they'll go out a little bit. But again, for all of this, it's to me, it's the great challenge of the municipality in the next decade, which is housing. And, you know, I see this in my other life with Habitat for Humanity. We're trying to actually build homes for not-for-profit and do it in a
sustainable
manner. And, you know, we got to buy a lot like anybody else, and that puts, you know, incredible strain. It's difficult for not-for-profits. And so we have not only an affordable housing crisis, we have an attainable housing challenge. And I say this to anybody, go find a new construction in this city, Halifax, for under $350. Yeah.
Sorry to laugh.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're finding 400,000, so what happens is like, so where do you go to buy it? And then when people put something up for resale, and think about this, they are in a great spot because it's like this couple. So you have somebody on Connaught Street. You know, I'm going to put it up for $100,000. I'm under no pressure. If I get my price, great. If I don't, doesn't matter. I'll stay here another 5 years. So, you know, you also have part of the population that is really in the driver's seat as a seller that's under no pressure, and they put it up there. And then what happens, there's somebody that's coming in potentially from a different part of the world or coming back home that to them, oh, you know what, $700,000 on Connaught? I just sold my place in Ottawa, Toronto for $2 million. That's a nice part of town. So it's a really interesting dynamic in this city. And it's, you know, we got the next 10 years to figure it out.
A few things about that. Sellers run everything. They have all the leverage. I'm even seeing sellers now who don't get the price they want. And I've written offers on some of these, and I've offered full list. So exactly what they've asked for. And they're countering 50 grand above asking because they thought that's what the competition, that's what the market would give them.
Yeah.
So they've asked for what they thought. And I said, there's no competition here and we're not paying that. And they go, okay, cool, we're taking off market. We'll come back in a year.
Yeah.
We'll come back in a year. We can wait. We can wait 1 year because this ain't going away. In a year, we'll get it.
Yeah.
So you pay it now or you wait. And when we go back to market in a year's time, what happens if it's busier? What happens if it's hotter? And we get 100. Right? Oh, great. You just lost 50. Right? How do you even, like, they're in the driver's seat in that sense, but in a greater sense of the market, we are in a lull right now, believe it or not. It's weird. Don't know why. Can't explain it. We are quieter. Days our market is like a day longer than it was. I'm not seeing the same level of competition. I was able to negotiate 2 deals for buyers this week, which is outrageous. Because first time this year, I've been able to do it. I did it twice where I was able to negotiate. Now, funny thing was, you negotiate, still pay over asking because the market's the market, and you don't want to give the opportunity away because sellers are what they're doing. But in terms of like, I still can't wrap my head around because the number is immigration. Even at 100K, we don't have it. We don't have. I love how optimistic you are when you say it's the great challenge of our industry to try and find a way to navigate these waters, which is what we have to do. But it's going to be quite fascinating to watch it. And the other side of this, in terms of the out-of-province buyer, a client wrote an offer in South End. No, it's not, like Quimple, Street, off of Quimple. And went in 75, 80,000 over asking. And we were like, I wanted to go 100 because that's what I thought was gonna do. I had recommended 100, 110, 115 because there were 8 other offers on the table, and I was like, someone's gonna go. This is fully move-in ready, completely refinished, gorgeous home. Sold 250 over.
Wow.
And it's almost $1 million. I can't give away the actual number. Almost $1 million on Elm in Central Halifax. And my client called distraught, of course, being like, how can I compete in this market? And like, who would pay this? And like the way I explained it was, That is someone from Ontario or BC or with money who knows that their family's going to live in it for 20 years and they don't care because they've seen how real estate actually works in their cities.
Yeah.
And they're banking on that same product to happen here, and they know it's coming because they probably lived in Ontario. They probably lived in Barrie in 2000 when they bought it 150 or 200, and they're probably seeing because Barrie now is selling 900 to $1 million. That's what they did, and they're playing it again. They just see the same dynamics working in all-time high demand, all-time low supply, and they're saying, all right, this is where I park my money. I'll make my money back. I'll get a return on investment. My kids are 1 and 2. They'll be out of here in 17, 18 years. I'll probably downsize then.
You're 100% bang on, Jason. I mean, I remember in 2000, I bought a home in Whitby in Toronto. And I remember at the time, you know, my friend was a developer, and Whitby was 10,000 people. It was all farmland, and they were building a place called Brooklyn, which was like a Bedford South, and it was Tribute Homes, which is kind of like the Clayton Developments of, you know, Ontario. And I said, "Are you crazy, Mark? I'm going out in the boonies." He said, "The 407 is going to go out there," and I mean, you know, this was back then. And the 407 goes by, and automatically, you know, Whitby now I think it's been like the seventh fastest growing community in Canada. It's got over 100,000 people. It's grown tenfold. And so the point to earlier is that, you know, a city adjusts. Like Halifax, no city can stop its population. So the population will come. What will happen is in places like Whitby, if the core of the city or the immediate surrounding areas like an Armdale or a Spryfield can't accommodate, what happens is the outlying communities will get filled.
So Sambro,
Williamswood, Catch Harbor,
Portuguese Cove,
the Enfields. And then what will happen is people will go there, and then the infill will occur.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden now between Portuguese Cove and Catch Harbor and Spryfield, over time they'll come back and you'll get an infield, or you'll get more development out in Lance or Enfield. So it will come and people will adapt. I'm a great believer, you know, partly it's my nature, I'm optimistic, but I'm also believing that, you know, everything has a reckoning. We have a reckoning as people. I mean, maybe you got to lose a few pounds. Sometimes, you know, I own 2 companies. You got to do things for your companies, municipalities. I mean, we have a reckoning today, and it's called housing in Halifax. Beautiful city, great city. We all know it's a wonderful city to grow up in, raise kids, work and all that. But we have a reckoning called housing, and it's not only affordable housing, it's obtainable housing. It's our vacancy rate, like it's across the board. New home construction, new homes, apartments. And so I think like most of us, you know, whether it's your own person, whether you got to lose 20 pounds, whether your business needs a little more focus, or whether it's a municipality or the development community, oftentimes it's difficult for organizations, people to do what's necessary until there's a reckoning. It's just the nature.
Yep.
And we have a reckoning now, so we have to take the old ways of doing business throughout, and we have to find ways to be adaptive or creative, because, you know, may not be 150,000, may not be 200,000, but I have no doubt Halifax has now been spotlighted, and people are coming here, and they're going to look for places to live, and we've got to supply it, and, you know, we have to figure out how to do it. And here's the thing, even before this has occurred, this is in the middle of COVID. So this occurred even when people couldn't quite easily get here. So our immigration, for the most part, has been on hold for 1.5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's applications approved, and people, you've read about this all throughout the news, that can't get over here, that have been approved and all of this because of COVID. Once these restrictions really let loose and they're unfolded, there's going to be immigration coming. I mean, Nova Scotia is going to increase. So there's a built-up demand of people wanting to come back, whether it's from other parts of Canada, whether it's immigration. So it's coming. So you have to adapt as a city, because when you have a 1.5% vacancy rate, that's not sustainable. And rent controls aren't the answer. I mean, they might be the answer in the short term, if some people believe that. Everybody has an opinion, but it's not rent control. It's a supply issue. You know this tomorrow, if 5,000 apartment units hit the market, then what would happen is the vacancy rate would go up. And when the vacancy rate's 3%, then what happens is a landlord all of a sudden has to think, okay, I'm not sitting here and Jason or Kevin have an option. I can go to 5 other apartments. I got to give a little love to my tenants or people coming in because they have options. But hey, if I've got 1 unit available in my 100 unit and the vacancy rate's 1.5%, I'm going to, maybe this 1 bedroom was normally 1,100. I'm going to make it 1,400. Take it or leave it.
The example I've used, first off, to come back, I'm going to comment on 2 things. When I run into buyers and they ask what's happening, I always just say the jig is up. It's over. They know. They know when they're coming. That's it. They know we're a great place to live. We were voted 2nd best place to live in North America. They know it. Guess what? They're coming.
Yeah.
They, be it, you could say out of country, out of province, doesn't matter. They're coming. The jig is up. Your job now is to unfortunately adapt to what this market is.
Well said.
Secondly, speaking to the rent control, I've used this analogy for houses, but it's the same thing as rents. This market now, what happened before this market turned into this market was you have 5 houses for sale on a street and you were one buyer. So you could knock on one door, bang, bang, bang. Hi, I'll give you $200K. Seller goes, I'm listed at $250. You go, $175, take it or leave it, or I'm going next door. Seller says, no, I'll give you $230. And you say, come on, give me $200. And he says, no, I'm saying $230. All right, bye. You take 4 steps. Bang, bang, bang. I got $200K cash. You're listed at $250. Can you give it to me for $200? Come on, can you do $225? Come on, I want $215. Come on. No, bang, I'm gone. You walk down to the 3rd house. Bang, bang, bang. You do that, you're going to find the seller that will give you $210, $205. Yeah. That was the market before.
Yeah, good analogy.
This is the market now. 1 street, 1 house for sale. You walk up to it, 10 idiots are standing outside of offers, waving in the air. And your job is to get into that pile of idiots and make sure your offer wins. You get in the door, you get it. That's called an accepted offer. And then you do what you can not to fuck up because those then 10 idiots are still outside waiting for you to fall through. And they'll come. And that's the same with renting. If you have 5 rentals on a street, you can go bang, bang, bang. You're charging $1,000 a month. I'm not paying that. I'll give you $800. Guy says, because it's an asset and he's paying the mortgage. He's losing money.
Absolutely.
He's gonna say, I'll give you $9, and you're gonna negotiate. No, I want it for $8. I'll do $850. Nope, sorry. Walk to the next rental. Bang, bang, bang. I'll give you $7, and you just figure out where you're going. Same concept. 1 rental. 10 people out front, all need a place to live. Someone's going to pay. Landlord goes, $2,000 a month. No utilities. Someone in that 10 has got the money.
Absolutely.
Whether or not they're cash strapped or not, they need a roof.
Yeah.
They're getting the roof. That's it. That's what this market is. Until when you're at the supply problem and why we need the rent, why the rental cap is not the solution. Rental caps mean investors can't get profit. If they can't get profit, they're not investing. If they're not investing, they're not creating more units. They're not creating more supply, which means that landlord renting out $2,000 a month has no competition on that block. If you get investors in, maybe at the end of the block, a couple investors take on a couple multi-units. Maybe they refinish them. Maybe they list it. Maybe they're in much nicer condition and they go, we're at $2,000 each.
Absolutely.
That shithole being rented out at $2,000 now has to readjust its valuation to be rented out because the competition is in a much better model. So, crap. Okay, I gotta go to $1,400. I gotta go to $1,500. That's why the whole thing works. The other problem is I'm gonna bring up the anomalies location. You can't recreate location. Yeah. You can't. I wish you could, because real estate would then be a bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
Would be a bubble.
Yeah.
You can't that is because you can't recreate that asset, that location or air if it's a condo, then location remains true. Mm-hmm. And location is what holds value. Houses suck. They depreciate. They're depreciating assets, people. A house is not your valuation. It is the land. The land and location is your money lock. It is what will go up because as they develop more out, as you say, Ketch Harbor, Sambro, Williamswood, Portuguese Cove, on the other side of the bridge, Chesapeake.
Yeah.
You go out there, think about it. More people go out there, they're going to start selling those homes at $350.
Yeah.
That will be the in price. If a home sells at $350 in Chesapeake and I'm in Porter's Lake, man, I'm going 6-7.
Yeah. And of course you would.
different market, different locate. My location's better.
Yeah.
Same thing's going to happen. Same principle, especially as you get influx of more people. If you cannot recreate location. We say Windsor. I think Windsor right now is the best buy in the entire province.
Yeah.
I think it's the most undervalued land. 5 years. If they develop East Hants, which I think they're doing, which I think you and I both think they're doing, they develop East Hants, put up 2,000 homes tomorrow. Great. What is out in East Hants?
Yeah.
Honestly, you're going to go to Truro or Halifax. They're both 35-minute drives.
Yeah.
So the East Hants, Elmsdale people are going to come to Halifax to do their drinking, their party, to have their leisure activities. Windsor, what's on your doorstep? The Valley.
Yeah.
Vineyards, restaurants, vacation tourism destination. What's 35 minutes away? The city, Halifax, restaurants, vacation, tourism destination. People like working and playing, don't they? It's a 35-minute drive to the city. Are you kidding me? That's those two criteria.
I couldn't agree with you more. Windsor, to me, I mean, it's a charming town. It truly is a town.
Yeah.
And the only town the East Hants corridor is not a town. It's Truro. But I mean, it's got the valley on the doorstep. It's quaint. So yeah, I think Windsor has incredible value. That's a great explanation, Jason. And you're right. It's going to continue, and we're going to have to find a way to adapt. Bottom line,
we'll figure it out. I don't know. I don't know how. Kevin, I'm gonna stop taking enough of your time. This has been a long enough podcast. Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah. You're always welcome back anytime you want to come back.
I look forward to it. You're a gentleman, and great seeing you. And stay well to the next time.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, my friend. Bye bye.
If you'd like to get in touch with Kevin, you can reach him at 902-403-7847 or at kevin@kwrapprovals.com. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can reach me at 902-220-7357 or jason@infinityrealestategroup.ca. Thanks again. Bye.